Ronnie O'Sullivan, The Edge of Everything, is the newest piece of media focused on the tormented genius narrative of our sport's biggest ever personality, and is available now to watch on Amazon Prime and select cinemas around the UK. I managed to watch this earlier today, and I wanted to give a brief kind of review of what I thought was a really compelling exclusive. Now, for most of the sort of first half of this 2 hour long documentary, it does spend a lot of time focusing on some of the off-table issues that O'Sullivan has faced for practically all of his life. And if you have watched any previous documentaries, previous films, or read any of Ronnie's books, a lot of this will be sort of rehashed information for you. And that's by no means a criticism of the documentary, because it is almost impossible to make content about O'Sullivan without talking about these things. And whilst this film isn't so much about mental health awareness, I do think showing this side of him is important, because there are so many occasions where he has done something or said something on or off the table, and the reaction is sort of always, oh, well, he's flawed, or, well, that's just typical Ronnie. So it can be easy to forget that this man has had to go through things that would knock the majority of people down. Not to say that he's immune from any form of criticism or doesn't deserve to be pulled up on things that he says or does, but sometimes contextualizing the root of who Ronnie is as a man just helps humanize him a little bit more, in my opinion, rather than just repeating the same old cliche that simply because he is a genius and one of the greatest sportsmen that's ever lived, there is naturally going to be baggage that comes along with that. The main difference, though, that this has, which most other shows about O'Sullivan doesn't, is it follows him through some of the tournaments that he played during the 2021-2022 season. And something like this, we've become used to seeing with football clubs like Arsenal, Tottenham, Wrexham, all having shows dedicated to a specific season, and then follows them sort of off the field as well. And it's exactly the same here. And we got the chance to see O'Sullivan backstage during tournaments, and to see and hear what he goes through after a match, whether he wins, whether he loses. And that was probably my biggest enjoyment of this particular film. Something that popped up a few times was him coming away from a loss and genuinely seeming okay about it, which was something I'd always kind of discounted when I'd heard him say it before. You know, we've become accustomed to him saying, oh, he wasn't bothered if he won, if he lost a match, no matter what the tournament. And the cynic in me would just automatically distrust what he was saying. And that is probably influenced a lot by listening to Stephen Hendry all of the time, who is just a complete 180 in terms of mentality towards losing. But having this chance to see him when the TV cameras are usually off just confirmed that most of the time, he really is quite philosophical when it comes to snooker and losing. And what has really helped him over the past decade or so is knowing that there is just more to life for him than what happens on the table. But it is probably the last hour of the film that is what most people, especially the die-hard O'Sullivan fans amongst you, that will have really enjoyed the most, as the final chapter of the show dedicates itself to the World Championship, where O'Sullivan ultimately went on and equalled Hendry's record of 7 world titles. And look, we all watched the tournament when it happened live, seeing how well he was playing. But this gave us the insight into how positive he seemed to be feeling for the most part. And even those around him, like Damien Hirst, Jimmy White, they were sort of talking to him at the beginning of the tournament, observing him and talking to him. And they seemed to already know what was about to happen just by seeing the kind of frame of mind he was in and how in touch with his game he was. There were also times during the documentary where Ronnie is mic'd up whilst at the table, so you could hear him muttering away to himself, both at the table or in his seat. And these are the kind of things that I love seeing from these particular sports documentaries, picking up things that the TV cameras don't, or hearing things that you probably wouldn't even catch if you were sitting there in the audience. But the whole segment on that last session of the final was the part that hooked me the most. Listening to him react in real time to his 12-5 overnight lead get reduced and reduced and reduced in that third session was just so fascinating. And we had montages of Judd getting closer and closer to him, and these were cut with audio conversations O'Sullivan was having in his dressing room, telling Stephen Peters things like, I feel like I've got stage fright, I feel awful, I don't want to face it anymore, I'm scared. And all of that really showed just how fragile that mentality can be at times, and why starting to work with Steve some 10 or so years ago was easily the best decision he's made in his career for me. Yes, he had won titles before him, and yes, probably would have continued winning titles even without that professional help, but it would be so hard to imagine him achieving what he has achieved post 2012 without having Steve in his corner. And look, ultimately, having that winning moment filmed for this documentary was pretty much the icing on the cake. You know, watching that long embrace with Judd at the end of the final when it happened kind of looked a bit like he had taken Trump hostage. But now in the documentary, with the mic picking up what was said and hearing just that release of pure emotion from Ronnie after he realised that he's done it and made another bit of history was, yeah, more than worthy of finding its way into a documentary like this. But yeah, ultimately, this was a really, really enjoyable show. Probably my favourite when compared to other pieces of media we've previously gotten showcasing this man. It done a really good job at merging the things that he's gone through in the past with the man that he is today, along with giving us an up close and personal look at one of his greatest ever achievements. So no matter if you're an O'Sullivan fan or not, a snooker fan or not, or just simply a sports fan in general, this is definitely well worth a watch. Not just to see him get the seventh and equal the record, but also to get a chance to delve into the mind of easily the greatest player to ever pick up a cue. If you've managed to watch it, let me know what your thoughts are on the film. I'd love to hear it. And you can already begin to imagine what something similar could look like if he ever does manage to go one better and win an eighth title to put him ahead of Hendry and just set yet another record that honestly may well never be matched.